Time for CBX Business News. The business news headlines is brought to you by QMax Wealth Management, making more possible. Economic optimism, trade reform urgency, and crypto breakthroughs. Hello and welcome to CBX Business News for Thursday, July 17, 2025. I'm Yunil Wood. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast locally, over 30% of Jamaicans expect economic improvement in the next year. That's according to the latest JCC survey. On the regional front, the WTO Director General sounds the alarm, calling for urgent trade reforms amid global uncertainty. And on the global stage, the U.S. House passes landmark crypto legislation after a historic 10-hour vote, a game changer for digital assets. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories and more right after our first break.
Are so much book you need for high school?
I'll show you how to make sure you have all the money for my books and even some extra. It's called budgeting, Dad. Making a budget is the most important thing you can do to track your money. It keeps a record of how much you make, how much you spend, where you spend it, and most importantly, how much you can save. Write down all your income, write down all your expenses, see where you can cut down and allot more money to more important things, like saving.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with historic news from the local manufacturing and export sector. Catherine Silvera has been appointed president of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, JMEA, becoming the first woman to hold the position. The announcement was made on Wednesday at the association's annual general meeting held at Summit in Kingston. She succeeds outgoing president Sidney Thwaites, who served with the distinction for 2 consecutive terms from 2023 to 2025. She will serve for the 2025-2026 term alongside Deputy President Cecil Foster of Fosrich Group and returning Treasurer Damian Dodd of Seprod. A respected figure in Jamaica's manufacturing and distribution sectors, Silvera serves as Director of Caribbean Foods and Director of Sales and Marketing at Chassis Ramson. In her inaugural address, Silvera outlined plans to modernize Jamaica's manufacturing and export sectors with a focus on improving data collection and industry intelligence to support decision-making.
Having been a part of this dynamic association for over 15 years and serving on the executive for the last 6, I have seen firsthand the strength, resilience, and innovation of our members. It is this experience that fuels my commitment to advancing the goals of our association and advocating for the growth and global competitiveness of our manufacturing and export sectors. First, data collection and industry intelligence. Globally, industries are built and rebuilt on data. In the era of artificial intelligence, automation, and predictive analytics, data is not just useful, it is foundational to competitiveness, innovation, and economic growth.
She also highlighted the importance of improved data collection and intelligence.
Yet here in Jamaica, we continue to lag behind in collecting and sharing meaningful data about our productive sectors. For far too long, we've struggled to gather consistent, reliable industry data, from manufacturing output and export capacity to employment figures and supply chain linkages. As a result, our ability to advocate effectively, whether for trade agreements, investment incentives, or public policy, is often undermined by the absence of hard evidence.
In a further step, Silvera announced plans by the JMEA to launch an industry intelligence platform to aggregate performance data from members and support evidence-based advocacy and stronger public-private sector alignment.
The JMEA will lead by example. We will seek to launch an industry intelligence platform that aggregates and analyzes key performance data from our members. But we need your buy-in. We need you to participate. Data is not about surveillance, it's about strategy. It's how we compete, it is how we grow, it is how we win.
Newly elected and first ever female president of JMEA, Catherine Silvera. A recent survey by the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, JCC, reveals that over 30% of consumers are optimistic about the country's economic outlook, expecting improvement within the next 12 months. The findings are based on the Business and Consumer Confidence Survey for the second quarter of 2025, conducted by Market Research Services Limited, MRSL. Executive Chairman Don Anderson presented the results during Tuesday's release of the Grace Kennedy Capital Management JCC Business and Consumer Confidence Indices, which was held under the theme Global Trade Wars, a ripple effect on business and your wallet.
In the first quarter of 2025, 32.4% said we expect things to get better, as against 27.4% who said it would get worse. So there's a net positive here of about 4 percentage points. What's interesting is that when we look at the second quarter of 2025, the net positive is larger. So again, there's this kind of feeling that things are going to get better, that we expect things to get better, and despite that, the consumers are saying, well, we're not sure about expenditure on things that would make our life better.
Anderson noted that females represented the majority of those who believed the economy would improve.
Women, females, 41% of them believe that things are going to get better, as against 25% who say believe things are going to get worse. And we've done an analysis by age groups, by socioeconomic groups, and by area. And I should mention that for every single question and everything that we're reporting on here is analyzed by those variables, as is the custom in our market research practice. We don't do a study without having a reference in terms of who are the people, the demographics, gender, age, socioeconomic, and by area. Okay? So we can see at a glance what sector is more optimistic than the other. And we can look at the green chart, which talks in terms of those who believe things will get better, and we could see, I believe it's pretty clear on the board, that persons in other regions outside of Kingston and outside of tourist areas are the ones that are particularly optimistic about things moving forward.
Meanwhile, the findings also revealed that over 90% of consumers surveyed said prices have increased when compared to a year ago.
When we look at prices compared to last year, 94% of all persons that we interviewed say that prices have gone up over the last year. And they believe that prices are going to continue to go up. So against what they see as possibly more job becoming available, they don't think that their disposable income is going to be improved any at all, because prices are going to undercut that. And this is significant. for all the studies that we have done over the last 4 years, when we look at this particular issue, people are concerned about the rising cost of living. So even if they believe they will get a job, it's going to be eroded by the significant increase in prices of all goods that they have to actually purchase.
Executive Chairman of Market Research Services Limited, Don Anderson. And Jamaican manufacturers and service providers aiming to grow in diaspora-rich markets now have a new ally. Veteran trade executive Stephen Dawkins has launched Execute, a consultancy focused on helping local businesses penetrate with what he calls the ABC markets: America, Britain, Canada, and CARICOM. According to Dawkins, these markets are ripe with untapped demand for Jamaican products, especially among members of the diaspora seeking a taste of home. However, he says many local companies are still not strategically targeting these regions. Dawkins informed that Jamaican products rarely compete on price, but they carry cultural influence. Therefore, our products sell abroad not because they're cheap, but because they represent Jamaica. This, he insists, is our competitive advantage, and Jamaica must leverage it with strategic intent. The consultancy will prioritize micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, many of which lack the technical and financial capacity to navigate export processes. Dawkins also acknowledges that the export journey can be daunting, but insists that with planning and persistence, Jamaican firms can gain a foothold internationally. While there is growing interest among Jamaican exporters in tapping into Latin America, Dawkins warns that high production costs and intense regional competition, especially in Central America, remain serious barriers. Now to foreign currency trading news. The US dollar is selling for $161.27 after the end of today's foreign currency trading. The Canadian for $117.67 and the pound for $215.34. The going rate for the euro is $186.52. Next to trading news from the Jamaica Stock Exchange. 100 stocks traded on the JSE Thursday, of which 39 advanced, 38 declined, and 23 traded firm. Pulse Investments, Key Insurance Company, Cygnus Real Estate Financial Jamaican Dollar, and Paramount Trading led the winners, while the losers were led by Omni Industries, One Great Studio, Epley Caribbean Property Fund SCC, and Honey Bun 1982. Now the main index declined by 64 points or 0.02% to close at 305,003.91. The junior market index also suffered a decline, but by 13.50 or 0.40% to close at 3,382.78. Now in today's market education feature, we're diving deeper into a term we mentioned in yesterday's regional news, the United Nations Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative, or UNSSE. The Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative is a global platform that works to support and encourage stock exchanges to enhance ESG practices, that's environmental, social, and governance, and to promote sustainable investment in capital markets. Its efforts are guided by 5 key focus areas: ESG disclosure, green finance, gender equality, small and medium enterprise SME growth, and securities regulation. The initiative is an UN partnership program co-organized by UNCTAD, the UN Global Compact, UNEP Finance Initiative, and the Principles for Responsible Investment, PRI. As of now, 100 stock exchanges around the world are official SSE partners, including some right here in the Caribbean. And that's it for our market education feature and the end of the local segment. Please stay with us. The regional business news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Hi, I'm Nielsen Rose, host of Let's Talk Stocks, reminding you that health is indeed wealth and time is really money. Why not spend a little time with us? Weekday mornings, 9 to 9:30 a.m. for your daily dose of business, economic, and investment insights.
Welcome back. We go now to news from across the region. Director General of the World Trade Organization, WTO, Okonjo Iweala, is calling for urgent reform of the global trade system, a move with direct implications for small, trade-dependent economies like those in the Caribbean. Speaking at a meeting of the WTO's Trade Negotiations Committee, TNC, on Tuesday, she emphasized the need for a genuine shift in negotiating mindset to deliver meaningful results that impact lives, livelihoods, and business prospects. While noting that 74% of global goods trade still moves under most favored nation MNF tariff terms, the Director General stressed that rising trade barriers and policy uncertainty pose serious threats to stability and predictability. She said the calls for WTO reform are growing louder as leaders around the world recognize the urgency of the moment. In today's climate of record trade policy uncertainty, safeguarding the stability and predictability the WTO provides has never been more urgent, she says. One message is clear. They understand the stakes, they understand the urgency, and they want results, she added. Referring to global leaders and policymakers she's engaged with in recent high-level discussions. As Caribbean nations continue to navigate global supply chain disruptions, shifting trade alliances, and growing tariff risks, any breakdown in multilateral trade rules could have far-reaching consequences for the region. Strengthening the WTO and pushing for meaningful reform isn't just a global priority, it's an imperative. The government of Guyana has strengthened its maritime capacity with the commissioning of a new state-of-the-art tugboat valued at $790 million through the Maritime Administration Department, MARAD. The acquisition is part of the government's ongoing maritime modernization drive aimed at aligning Guyana's port operations with international standards and expanding its capacity to serve the growing oil and gas economy. The vessel, named Arrow, it was built by leading Dutch shipbuilder Damen in partnership with local firm Farm Supplies Limited and is designed to support towing, mooring, and pushing operations. The tugboat can handle vessels between 10,000 and 20,000 tons and will be operated by a crew of 6. Speaking at the commissioning ceremony, Public Works Minister Juan Edgehill called the investment a milestone in Guyana's journey toward a globally competitive maritime sector.
Guyana's maritime sector has moved from broken down old boats, some lodged at the Mazaruni dockyard for years, and people looking at boats and asking if you're selling scrap metal, to a facility that will be able to meet international standards.
That was Guyana's Minister of Public Works, Juan Edgehill. We go now to news from Barbados. The Caribbean region is on the verge of a major breakthrough in inter-island transport, with a new ferry service expected to begin operations within the coming months. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Kerry Simmons, confirmed that an agreement has been finalized between Barbados and Guyana to start ferry services, focused initially on cargo transport. Plans are underway to expand the service to include passengers shortly after.
The intention is to have a connectivity across the island chain. So, for example, those products which may be brought from Guyana to Barbados may now then be carried also to St. Vincent, may also be carried to Dominica. The intention, however, is to go beyond just moving cargo. We also want to find a way of moving people and to move people at inexpensive rates. Discussions with the Caribbean Private Sector Organization indicate that they are on board. The discussions now turn on how we can drive the costs down, and the ambition is to have those costs per person well beneath 100 United States dollars per trip, and therefore making access between the islands far more competitive for a wider swath of people than they now are.
Barbados' Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Kerry Simmons. Now to trading news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. 18 securities traded on the TTSE Thursday, of which 10 advanced, 4 declined, and 4 traded firm. Leading the winners were CIBC Caribbean Bank, NCB Financial Group, the West Indian Tobacco Company, and Massey Holdings, while the losers were One Caribbean Media, Prestige Holdings, First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, and Ansa Macau. Other results include the All TNT Index advancing by 1.24 to close at 1,485.44. The Composite Index advancing by 5.40 to close at 1,017.75. The Cross-Listed Index advanced by 1.38 to close at 72.43, and still at 96.08 is the SME Index. And we take a short break, but please stay with us. Nielsen Rose is up next with the International Business News segment.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. In the international news today, in a historic move for the digital asset industry, the U.S. House of Representatives has advanced 3 major cryptocurrency regulation bills following the longest vote in the House history. The marathon session, which lasted over 10 hours, overcame a deep division within the Republican Party and marked a significant step forward toward establishing a federal framework for digital assets. The legislation includes the Genius Act, which focuses on regulating stablecoins, the Clarity Act, aimed at defining a comprehensive market structure for cryptocurrencies and a controversial CBDC ban bill, which could prohibit the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency. The Genius Act, already passed by the Senate in June, is now poised to become the first major crypto regulation to reach the president's desk. The Clarity Act is expected to be voted on next week. The breakthrough came after the GOP leadership agreed to attach the CBDC ban to a must-pass defense spending bill, a move that helped secure support from party hardliners. President Donald Trump reportedly backed the compromise, helping to resolve the impasse. Supporters of the legislation say it will provide much-needed clarity and consumer protections in the fast-evolving crypto space. Critics, however, warn that banning a U.S. CBDC could hinder innovation and global competitiveness. Goldman Sachs delivered a robust second quarter earnings report on Wednesday, beating Wall Street's estimates thanks to a stellar performance from its trading division. The bank reported a profit of $3.72 billion or $10.91 per share, marking a 22% increase from the same period last year. Revenues for the quarter rose 15% to $14.58 billion, exceeding analysts' forecasts by approximately $1.1 billion. A significant portion of the surprise came from Goldman's trading operations, which generated $840 million more in revenue than was expected. The results underscores Goldman Sachs' continued strength in navigating volatile markets and capitalizing on trading opportunities, even as broader economic uncertainties persist. Analysts had anticipated a solid quarter, but the scale of the outperformance has sparked renewed investor confidence in the firm's strategy and execution. Goldman's leadership credited the results to disciplined risk management and strong client engagement across its trading desks. Initial jobless claims in the United States fell by 7,000 to 221,000 in the second week of July, defying market expectations of a rise to 235,000. This marks the lowest level of new claims since April and highlights the continued strength of the U.S. labor market. The latest figures come in well below forecasts, which had anticipated an increase of 8,000 claims. Meanwhile, continuing claims, a measure of ongoing unemployment, held steady at 1,956 million, slightly under expectations of 1.97 million and remaining below the highs seen in June 2021. The data aligns with recent statements from the Federal Reserve, which has emphasized the resilience of the labor market even as hiring momentum has slowed since the beginning of the year. One notable development was a rise in claims filed by federal government employees, which increased by 158 to 596, the highest in 7 weeks. The uptick follows recent layoffs at the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, drawing attention to employment trends within the public sector. Wage growth in the UK slowed to its lowest pace in nearly 3 years, with regular pay, excluding bonuses, rising 5% year-on-year to £677 per week in the 3 months to May 2025. The figure, while slightly above market expectations of 4.9%, marked a deceleration from the 5.3% increase recorded in the previous period. Both the private sector and public sector saw a slowdown in wage growth. Private sector earnings rose 4.9%, down from 5.2%, while public sector pay increased 5.5%, slightly below the previous 5.6%. Among industries, the wholesale, retail, hotels, and restaurant sector led with the strongest annual wage growth at 7.1%, followed by services 6%, construction 4.9%, manufacturing 4.8%, and finance and business services 3.1%. Despite the slowdown in nominal wage growth, real wages adjusted for inflation rose by 1.1%, offering some relief to workers amid ongoing cost of living pressures. The data suggests that while wage pressures are easing, earnings are still outpacing inflation, a dynamic likely to factor into the Bank of England's upcoming monetary policy decision. And those were your international business stories. After the break, join Neil for your recap.
I'm trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
I'm also trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
Start a conversation with the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Check jamstockx.com for information and a list of registered stockbrokers. You can also call the Jamaica Stock Exchange at 876-967-3271 for information on how to begin. I am achieving my financial goals.
I'm achieving my financial goals.
Welcome back, and now for a recap of our top stories. Locally, over 30% of Jamaicans expect economic improvement within the next year. And on the regional scene, WTO Director General calls for urgent trade reforms amid rising global uncertainty. And internationally, U.S. House passes landmark crypto bills after a historic 10-hour vote. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of Nielsen Rose and the entire production team, I'm Yanil Wood, thanking you for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.